What's happening, people? The Premier League is back. First game of the season. I don't know about you, but I'm absolutely buzzing. It's Tottenham versus Burnley at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Looking forward to kicking off this campaign. Exciting one for both clubs. I have a pleasure and a real privilege to be joined by Andrew from Always Claret for this opposition preview. Andrew, firstly, how are you doing? And secondly, talk to people a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Harry, and thank you for having me on. Yeah, I run my social media platforms as always, Claret. Creating Burnley content for Burnley fans mainly. I create a lot of graphics which I post on social media. That sort of came through struggling with my own mental health issues, but I've worked my way through them, and yeah, I just create football graphics and share them on social media. Jump on, the odd podcast here and there. Work alongside TurfCast podcast who we create quite a lot of Burnley podcast content, and yeah, just general Burnley fan, really.
Oh, no, I love that fantastic stuff. Thank you for being so open with us. I've always liked your graphics when I've seen them on X. So, no, I really appreciate you giving me your time to talk football. We'll talk Premier League because it's back, which is fantastic. So, if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. If you're listening on a podcast platform, please do drop us a follow and 5-star review and let us know what you're thinking of these opposition previews. Andrew, if you don't mind, I'll ask you firstly about pre-season, which is now over. What were your thoughts on Burnley's pre-season, and who was your kind of standout performers in that?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a mixed one, really. We've had quite a few behind closed door games, which obviously the public's not been able to watch, and then we've had, I believe we drew 2-2 with Huddersfield and beat Shrewsbury 2-0, or it might be the other way around. But I think the standouts from both those games were our youth team. A lot of the players in our main starting 11 didn't really feature too heavily in those games. A lot of it was our under 21 squad. Um, and then the last couple of games, again, like I say, we've lost 1-0 to Stoke, and then recently lost 1-0 to Lazio, which they were both sort of disappointing results in terms of, you want to start getting goals, you want to start building patterns of play. Um, but to be honest, for me, it's pre-season. You can't read too much into it overall. And even the Lazio game, that was our final pre-season game, and half of the team who started won't play against you guys next weekend. It's one of them where it's really hard to say how the season's going to go with pre-season, but a lot of it's about bedding in new signings, and that I think from what I have seen of the pre-season, we have been doing that well, and it's good to see them actually, get into the side and gel a little bit, ready for the Premier League.
Okay, no, it sounds okay. I think agree from Tottenham point of view as well. It's kind of been a bit up and down, a bit mixed bags, but at the end of the day, it's about performances and fitness rather than the results. So I do share that opinion with you. Let's look ahead then briefly to the season. We'll get on to end of season predictions later. How are you feeling about the new season? Are you excited? Are you glad it's back?
Yeah, I can't wait. I think I'm probably one of the most optimistic Burnley fans. I think a lot of people have reservations about this season. You look back at our last season in the Premier League, which unfortunately ended at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium with you guys relegating up. But yeah, you look back at our last couple of stints in the Prem, and they haven't been the greatest of seasons. Um, you look back on the last four seasons, we've been promoted, got relegated, won the league, got relegated, and obviously got promoted last year. So it's been a very up and down last few years. I'm quite optimistic this season will be better than the last couple of stints we've had in the Premier League. Obviously, I won't say where we're going to finish because we'll leave that till a bit later on. Um, but yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. Scott Parker's got a point to prove in terms of his managerial career after his sacking at Bournemouth and Fulham. He's never kept a team in the Premier League for a second successive season. So he's got a point to prove himself. Um, like I said, we are lots of people's favourites to go down as bottom of the league. So I'm excited to hopefully prove a lot of people wrong and hopefully have a better season than we did last time. That's just all I hope for this year. More
Yeah,
enjoyable
no,
than last time.
100%. You've kind of touched on it, but I was going to ask you next about Scott Parker, whether it concerns you that he hasn't kept a team up yet. Do you think that's maybe a good thing in a way to kind of be almost like third time lucky, or it kind of put things right?
Yeah, he's definitely got a point to prove with that. Like I said, he got sacked at Bournemouth, he got sacked at Fulham. He's went to Club Bruges, only managed 12 games there before he left. He had a couple of years out. So I think he's got a big point to prove for himself. And then obviously, the last time we were in the Premier League, we had Vincent Company, who was the big name, the former Manchester City captain. Everyone knew him as the winner, and we didn't perform. Vincent Company didn't perform. Whereas Scott Parker, I think there's a lot less expectation on him as a manager because of his previous stint. So it doesn't particularly concern me going into this season, but I do hope that our owners have learned from the last time with Vincent. In terms of if we are at the rock bottom of the table come maybe Christmas time, maybe it's time thinking about having a change. Um, but Scott Parker's got us into the Premier League in a season where, to be totally honest, we probably didn't look like we should have come up. Um, so yeah, I have faith in him that he can actually pull it off this time.
No, that's good. I like that you have confidence because I was going to ask you that as well in terms of whether you think you needed to get someone in that maybe has a proven track record of keeping teams up. I'm not just saying these managers, but you have your Roy Hodgsons, your Sam Allardyce, they come in. David Moyes, another, keep you up, do a good job. So if you had to hand on heart now and honestly answer this, do you believe that you'll have to turn to that type of manager maybe mid-season? Do you think that Scott Parker will be okay and have the season? Of course, a lot depends on how it goes.
Yeah, I would like to say yes. We'll see Scott Parker through to the end of the season. He's a lot more down to earth than previous managers, and Burnley aren't a club known for sacking their managers too quickly. I think if you look over the last 15 years or even the last 10 years, we had Sean Dyche for pretty much 10 years, Vincent Company straight after him, and then Scott Parker. So we are a team who likes to give our managers time. But I do hope, if it does look like we are in need of that change, I would like it to be sooner rather than later. But listen, Scott Parker's done an amazing job for us up to this point. Last season, like I say, that we started the season with players where we thought we'd run away with the league, lost a lot of those players, and then I think just before transfer deadline day, we sort of thought even playoffs would be a struggle. Excuse me. Yeah, so we thought even playoffs would be a struggle to get to. Um, and we've ended up coming second in the league, only losing 2 games and only conceding 16 goals. So the job that Scott Parker's done so far has been fantastic. And hand on heart, he deserves the chance at the Premier League.
Absolutely, totally agree with you as an outsider. I was going to ask you about hopes and expectations of Burnley this year. I assume the sole aim is all about survival first.
Yeah, I think that's the main goal, really. Finish 17th, and just don't go straight back down. But personally, I just want a more enjoyable season than we had a couple of years ago. A few more wins at Turf Moor, a couple of nice wins on the road, and I would be happy with that. But I think overall the aim is to try and stay up, or at least if we are to go down with a little bit of dignity, rather than
Yeah.
just fall at a whimper. We don't want to be another Derby County or Southampton. We want to, we historically over the last 10 years we have been a Premier League team, so we want to get back to that established as a Premier League team. So I think this season, just try and stay up.
Is the minimum like you want to see? You talk about fighting, going down fighting? Is it like you see it as kind of going to the final day and still being with a possibility, a chance of staying up? Is that type of thing you're thinking about?
Yeah, and like when we were the last season in the Premier League, a lot of the games we were 2-0 down by half time, 3-0 down by half time. We weren't in games much. And we'd go to Turf Moor, for example, 3 weeks into the season and know full well that we were going to concede 4 or 5 goals. And I just want to see that tightened up a little bit and be in games a little bit more, a little bit more competitive. And like I say, hopefully it goes down. Hopefully it's done before the final day and we do stay up. But if it has to, hopefully we can at least have it go down to the final day and still have that glimmer of hope that we are going to stay in the Prem.
Fingers crossed for your sake. You speak about there about potential going straight back down. Does it concern you that 3 promoted teams have gone straight back down in the last 2 Premier League seasons? It looks like the competition's getting a little bit tougher.
Yeah, it's a strange one because you look at the teams that have come up this time and we're 3 very different teams, and hopefully this is the season where that pattern breaks. Because if it's the 3rd successive season where all 3 promoted sides go straight back down, it doesn't look good for the supposedly best league in the world. Um, yeah, it's worrying that, for example, again, a couple of years ago when we won the league with Vincent Company, we ran away with it. We finished on 100 and I think 101 points. Ran away. Excuse me, we'd ran away with it. We'd won it. Promotion in the earliest it's ever been done. And then I think after 3 minutes in our first game, we were in the relegation zone for the entire season after that. So it's concerning at how big that gap really is. So hopefully this is the season where that pattern does break, because otherwise there needs to be the structure needs to be looked at, on payments and things, because if you have that 3 seasons in a row, it just doesn't look good, does it?
No, it doesn't. Andrew, what stood out to me in your championship season in the 24-25 campaign was how strong and resolute you were defensively. Very rarely conceded. It just stood out to me. I thought, you just bank on Burnley keeping a clean sheet. Do you think you can keep that keep that defensive record in the Premier League? Of course, you're going to concede more goals, but can you remain strong? You talk about wanting to tighten up. Do you believe that you can do that and maybe concede no more than 1-2 goals a game?
Yeah, it's certainly hopeful. I'd like to say, we're going to come into the Premier League this season and we're going to keep that amazing record and, try and. I think last season we didn't concede more than a goal a game in the league. So I would like us to hopefully try and do that. But obviously, we've just lost James Trafford to Manchester City and CG Egan Riley's gone to Marseille. Now, they were 2 of the main, defensive structure for us. We've managed to keep Maxime Mestev at the moment somehow. Obviously, there's always going to be rumours, and he's such a crucial part of our defence. So like I say, I'd like to think so, but we've lost quite a few pieces of that puzzle in this transfer window, and they were crucial to that incredible defensive record. But I think Scott Parker's learned a lot from his last 2 stints in the Premier League. Specifically being beaten 9-0 by, I believe it was Liverpool in his last game at Bournemouth, and I think that's taught him a lot on how to shore up his defence and not give away too many chances to the opposition. And I think we'll be a little bit tighter. Might not, keep us up. We're definitely not going to have, 30 clean sheets and only concede 16 goals all season. That's not going to happen. But hopefully we can still have a little bit of defensive solidarity, rather than just be completely open.
Yeah, exactly that. No, 100%. Who do you think will be a key player for Burnley this campaign? Did you look at and go, you're going to get me the goals, or you're going to really shine and create? Of course, you signed the likes of Broja and Chelsea.
Yeah, I think Maxime Esteve, who I've just highlighted there, he's going to be maybe not at the end of the pitch putting the ball in the back of the net, but he's going to be crucial defensively for us. That's what we need at the lower end of the table. We need a strong defensive unit. And there's no coincidence that Maxime was linked with moves away in January last season. I believe you guys were interested. There were links with him even last summer, even though we'd only just signed him, on a permanent deal. He's a player who I can see going to the very, very top. So he's going to be crucial in our season this year if we are to stay up.
Okay, thank you. It's a good shout. Thank you very much. It's interesting to hear. Let's touch on the transfer window then before we get to the game itself. What are your thoughts from a Burnley point of view on the transfer window? Again, we have touched on it. Would you say, hand on heart, is improved or decreased your chance of survival?
It's difficult because there's a couple of signings who we've made who are unknowns. For example, Luan Chuana, he's not really a player that's well known to us. We've only seen him a couple of times in the preseason friendlies. So it is a little bit difficult, obviously, losing a couple of our crucial players as well. But then we've replaced, for example, James Trafford with Martin Dubravka. And I know he's got the Premier League experience. Hopefully, he will be our number one. And hopefully that will be a good signing for us. But there's quite a few unknowns that we've signed, and I think that's the big concern for me, that we don't really know how they're going to perform. And then on the flip side, we've signed Kyle Walker, which is absolutely mind blowing to me that Kyle Walker's signed for Burnley. But a player of that quality, I think a lot of people have said how he's dropped off and he's nowhere near as good as he were. But a player of that quality coming to a team like Burnley, I think it's going to have a massive positive impact, not only on the fans and on the pitch in terms of that right back position, but I think it'll have an impact on the other players. These younger lads like Luca Koleosho, for example, they're playing with Kyle Walker, and it'll help them, boost their little bit of confidence when they turn to the side and see this 6-time winning Premier League champion on their side, leading the game. So yeah, I think overall the signings we've made have improved the team. We've still got a very, very bloated squad, and there are still players that we could probably do with another centre back. We could probably do with another striker. So there are still positions that we could do with filling, even though we've got such a big squad.
Yeah, see, I was just having a look here, and I've seen some of the players you signed, but you've signed more than I thought, to be totally honest with you. And I'm just looking, squad size 39, average age 25.9. It's really interesting, 13 national team players. It's quite a lot for a club like Burnley. But I'm just looking here in terms of players you signed. A lot of them are end of loans, but it's a lot more than other clubs in there. So it's a really interesting signings. So you've got Marcus Edwards, Jaden Anthony, Axel Twansebi. What one would you say at this moment in time? Of course, a lot depends on how the season goes, injury record, etc., etc. Who would you say is the, I don't know, kind of best value for money or the best recruitment at this time? There's a big, good signings in there.
Personally, at the moment, I'd have to say Jaden Anthony. He got us, I think there were 8 goals and 6 assists last season or something ridiculous. He's a player who goes very unnoticed, even by Burnley fans. A lot of people have said that he's not good enough for the Premier League, but for me, especially in watching the Lazio friendly the other day, down that left-hand side, he was very dangerous. And for me, we're going to need the wingers to chip in with the goals. We're going to need midfielders chipping in if we are to stand a chance. And I think that Anthony will be one of those players, and I think he will. He will also have a point to prove because of his time at Bournemouth, which didn't work out too well in the Premier League. So I think he'll have a point to prove, and he's worked with Scott Parker. He's worked with him previously. So yeah, I think for me he has been crucial in the fact that we were able to turn his loan from last season into a permanent deal. I think that's been fantastic for us.
Okay. I was looking here, 13 players who signed. That's quite a lot, and that doesn't include loans ending, because they register that as well, don't they, as new players, but they're not technically new at all, are they? Can I ask you about the business you've done with Chelsea in this window? Because Chelsea reportedly have received about, 55 million from you for Leslie Kuchara and also Amanya Broya. Who do you think at this moment in time has got the better deal, Burnley or Chelsea? £55 million looks a lot, but let's say in particular Broya really works out and is all of a sudden a goal scoring machine if he can stay fit. You could have got the better side of the deal, the better toss of the coin.
Yeah, I think if we are able to keep Broya fit and he scores us 10 plus goals this season, I feel like we've got the better side of the deal. Um, the fees that have been reported for these players, I'm not sure on uh, how should I say it, not how inflated they have been. Um, Burnley don't spend that much money on players. We don't spend over £20 million on players, and both those signings would be our record signings. And there's not been much made of that by Burnley. So I'm not sure on the fees reported the amounts, but if these two lads come in, if Leslie and Broya come in and they keep us up, we've definitely got the better side of the deal. If they come in and Broya only plays 2 games, for example, and doesn't score, Chelsea have had our pants down. But hopefully, we can keep him fit, and we've got a good side of the deal. I'm confident with them. That you've got to be confident and you've got to be optimistic, especially with new signings. And everyone deserves to be given the chance. And the second they pull on that Burnley shirt, they'll be backed all the way.
Yeah, that's a good thing, and rightly so. I think it's not about money, because you look at Tobacco and Walker, both free transfers, and that could be a good bit of business as well. But I'm just looking here. It says Ugrichenko is 28.7 million euros and Mamanya Broya 23 million euros, and they reckon combined it's about 55 million apparently with add-ons. So it's quite a lot. Obviously, Marcus Edwards as well. I think that's a really good bit of business. 10 million euros. That's obviously ex-Tottenham as well. So I think that could be really good. I'm sure he'll be keen to impress. Yeah, you got Barca Humphreys, 14 million euros. Yeah, you got quite a few up there. Signings from Lazio, 15 million. So looks like you're doing more. But what is evident, and you've said it, and I can absolutely see it here, is defence, in particular centre-back, that it looks like it has to be the priority for Burnley. But if the transfer window closed shut tonight, Andrew, what would you rate it out of 10?
I'd probably say 7.5. We've done some good business, and we've done, especially this last week, we knew was key in terms of how the season's going to go forward. Obviously losing James Trafford, we knew we needed a goalkeeper in who will be ready to be the number one by the time we come to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We knew full well we needed a centre midfielder to replace Josh Brownhill. And I think for the last 2 or 3 years, we've been screaming out for another striker. So, this last week has been crucial in how the season can, how we can go ahead in the season. But yeah, I think if it were to shut tonight, I'd probably say 7, because we need some more players. We need at least another centre back and maybe another striker. And there's always players that you want to sign that haven't.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Exactly that. Can I talk to you about James Trafford? You have mentioned him already. Again, reportedly about 32 million euros. How would you make of the way that Burnley handled it? Do you think you're right to accept that kind of money? Obviously, he had that clause in his contract which always favoured a move to Man City, but correct me if I'm wrong, they got him for less than that. What would you make of that? It's the right thing to do from Burnley, because of course it's a lot of money as well, isn't it, for a goalkeeper?
Yeah, I think he always wanted to go back to Manchester City. I think it was always on the cards. He's come through the academy there. Um, they've obviously seen something in him, from a young age to put that clause in there when they first sold him to us. Um, and yeah, I think the fact that clause was in there and that he is a Manchester City boy has definitely helped lower the price for him in terms of how much City have paid for him. But it was the best thing go around. The last time we were in the Premier League, he looks like a little boy, stood in front of headlights. I just remember, in fact, it was Son from you guys just running towards him at Turf Moor, and he just looked like a little kid stood in front of this big footballer. Um, and Son's not the biggest of people, is he? So he just didn't look in his comfort zone, and he just looked well out of his depth. And then obviously last season, we've he's had the incredible season that he's had. Um, and I think he made it clear on the Ben Foster podcast that there had been a bid from Newcastle, and he had pretty much agreed personal terms, and then the bid had fallen through, and he's ended up staying at Burnley last year. And it's credit to him for the professionalism that he obviously wanted to move, but he carried on, worked as well as he did, played as well as he did, and then he's got his move back to his boyhood club. So yeah, he goes with all our best wishes, but it was the right time for him to move on, I think, and we've got a good deal with
Okay.
Dubravka coming in.
I think you have. I think it's a really smart deal, and I think the club have done the right thing. But to play devil's advocate just purely for the sake of playing devil's advocate, would you question? Not this is not to do with Burnley getting a bad deal or anything, but would you question James Trafford himself in terms of his ambition? Because he would have been the number one at Burnley. I personally believe if he'd gone to Newcastle, he would have been the number one too. Because I think Pope's a good goalkeeper, but I think Eddie Howe's always, hasn't he, spoken about he wants a goalkeeper in a back line to play with their feet. James Trafford can do that. Nick Pope can't. So I think over time it would have been the number one. Whereas you assume at Man City, I could be assuming wrong, depends on which goalkeeper leaves. I believe it's Ortega at the moment, but Trafford was going to, for now, I think anyway, be the number two and sit on the bench. Do you question his ambition to take the higher kind of wage, I suppose, at Man City? Of course, you speak about being a boyhood City fan, used to play there, but being a number two at City or being a number one at Newcastle or Burnley?
Yeah, it's one of them strange things, isn't it? He's gone to Manchester City, which to leave Burnley to go to a club like Manchester City or to Newcastle, it's obviously a step up the competitions that they're in, and of course the clubs that they are. But I think I'm with you. I don't think he's gone to Manchester City and he's going to be there starting number one, um, unless something happens. It's football. All it takes is one little injury for Edison or Ortega, and he gets thrown in as the goalkeeper and then has one good game, and that's it. We've seen it happen many, many times before. That's how Nick Pope came through at Burnley. We had Tom Heaton, he got injured, Pope came on, and his career just went from there. So yeah, it's it's a strange one, but I think he must know that at some point in the future he will become Manchester City's number one. And he's going to be learning from, if Ortega leaves and Edison stays, he's going to be learning from one of the best goalkeepers in the world. I can't knock his ambition, even if he is going to sit on the bench for a couple of years. He's going to be learning from the best, and we know how good Pep is as well as a coach. So yeah, he goes with the well wishes. I wish he hadn't gone. I wish he had stayed at Burnley, but when someone like Manchester City comes knocking, he can't turn it down.
Fair enough. Really appreciate your honesty on that. It's always hard to admit. And, when players kind of move on in their career, whatever club you are, and even like me being a Tottenham fan, there's some player like Harry Kane, for example, he's moved on to Bayern for his development. He's gone forward in his career. And sometimes you have to accept that. So, honestly, I really appreciate you being open and transparent about that. But let's move on to the game itself, Tottenham versus Burnley, which is getting ever closer, which I'm very happy to say. Let's focus on Tottenham a little bit now, Andrew, for the first time. How do you rate, firstly, Tottenham's chances this season under Thomas Frank? Do you think that's a good appointment?
Yeah, I think Thomas Frank's the best manager you could have got with Ange going. I love Thomas Frank. I really, he's one of the few managers in the Premier League that I actually could sit down and listen to all day. I've seen him when he's done like Monday Night Football and he talks about his tactics and he really understands the game. But he understands how to make it entertaining for the fans as well. And he's done such a fantastic job at Brentford. I think it was time for him to move on to take that step up again. Again, no disrespect to Brentford, but when a club like Tottenham comes calling from someone like Brentford, that step, it just makes sense. And yeah, I think he's an absolutely brilliant signing for Tottenham, and I hope that it works out well for him. Because like I say, I really rate him, and I don't want his career to go down. If something goes wrong with you guys, but yeah, I think it's a good signing. I think it might take a little bit of time for his ideals to be implemented. Um, but yeah, I think it's the best appointment that could have been made at the time.
Okay, thank you. How do you view Tottenham as a club and their supporters? I want you to be totally honest with you. Forget who you're talking to and what channel you're on. Do you respect them? Do you envy them? Do you not really care? I really wanted to hear your opinion on this. Please do be honest.
So the, I've never disliked Tottenham. Saying that, like holding my breath, like yeah, I've never disliked Tottenham. They're probably the traditional big six, probably one of the two that I don't actually dislike. Um, but I've always got a little bit of not annoyance, but I don't know what the word is. A little bit of something in me, because my favourite game of all time, watching Burnley, is against Tottenham in the Carling Cup semi-final in 2009. We'd played you guys at White Hart Lane and lost 4-1 in the first leg, and we had to win 3-0 in the second leg. And we managed to score 3 goals and get it to extra time. And then Roman Pavlyuchenko scored in the last minute to break Burnley hearts and knock us out, and you guys went to the final. So I've always got a little bit of something in me for Tottenham where not necessarily dislike, but something in me where I just remember that game and how heartbroken 13-year-old Andrew was. But at the same time, you look at the players that you've had and the managers that you've had, and finishing 17th last year but winning the Europa League. Like I would trade many seasons watching Burnley to see that happen. I've always said I'd rather see my club win a trophy than stay in the Premier League, and I wish
Absolutely.
that we'd focus on those trophy competitions. But as a business,
Yeah.
it makes more sense to try and stay in that league. So I understand it, but for me, I want to see my club win a trophy. And I guess last season, for you guys, in terms of the league, wasn't the greatest, but you guys had that night winning the Europa League. You guys have seen that trophy being lifted by your team. So I'm always going to be jealous of any team that manages to do that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Andrew. Again, I appreciate your honesty on that. You mentioned we're one of, I think you said one of the top 6 teams that you don't mind, I suppose. Who's the other one? I'm interested.
Ironically, Arsenal.
Oh,
just,
no.
just you know, there's no real rivalry there from Burnley, just with Arsenal. You know, I've got my reasons why I dislike each of the other traditional top six clubs, but Arsenal and Tottenham, they're okay.
Fair enough. I'll take that. It's not too bad. Thank you. Do you think? Well, I tell you what. We go to the game itself a little bit deeper into it. How do you feel about this game? Of course, it's going to be that excitement, that adrenaline of a new season. How do you want also Burnley to approach it?
Just don't let you score more than 3 goals, and I'll be happy. Um, just I want us to approach it like we have every game last season under Scott Parker, where we know the opposition that we're coming up against, and we respect the opposition that we're playing against, but also remember the fundamentals of what has got us into the Premier League. Um, I don't want us to try and change our style or try and change our formation from what got us here. Um, I think a lot of teams do try and change as soon as they come to the Premier League, and it doesn't work. Um, Not necessarily saying, if it's not working at half time, that we don't make changes and we don't tinker with it. But I want us to come into the game as if, last season's just continued. We've got a few new lads in, but we're just carrying on from last season, and hopefully we can, carry on the form that we're on.
Okay, thank you. Any Spurs players you fear in this game? Ones that maybe you think could cause you the most problems?
Well, I had two, but fortunately for us, unfortunately for Tottenham, they're not going to be involved because obviously Son. I always feared him. He got the Puskas Award for the goal that he scored against us. He's just an unbelievable player. So I am glad that we don't have to face him this season. And then the other one, unfortunately, James Maddison. There's a really, really good player in there. And I believe, is it 6 months he could be out injured for now? Like he's got really badly injured, hasn't he? So yeah, those were the two that I were really, really worried about. But I think Kudus, the new signing Kudus, I think he could be one for us to watch, and I think he will be a good player for you guys.
What have you made quickly of Tottenham's transfer window as an outsider? You talk about Kudus there. I totally agree. You think he could be a really big signing?
Yeah, I think you've had a good transfer window. I think very similar to what we were saying about Burnley, though there's still some areas that you could improve on. I think you need a number 9 cemented. Like
Yeah.
there's never really been a replacement for Harry Kane in my eye from the outside looking in. You're still not replaced Harry Kane, and the goals that he scored for you guys were crucial. And I think that's the area for me. Again, as an outsider looking in, that's the area that really needs strengthening, especially when you've lost Son. The goals are going to be hard to come by.
That's interesting. No, I totally agree with you. We need to focus at least on that front line. A striker would be nice. I can't see it happening because you've got Solanke and Richarlison. But in an ideal world, we move Richarlison on and we get that striker. I do share that with you. So thank you for your input on that. Can I ask you who you think can hurt Spurs the most from you? You talk about who you think is going to have the stand-up campaign and new signings. Who do you think is really going to, I don't know, test Tottenham? Would it be Marcus Edwards? Or maybe that grudge that, Tottenham let him go?
Potentially, I think he'll have a point to prove. But I can see it being Jadon Anthony. One of the things we noticed, especially towards the end of last season, with having signed Marcus Edwards, was a lot of teams would double up on him. So a lot of teams would focus on putting 2 players on Marcus Edwards, which would leave the space over on the left-hand side for Jadon Anthony. And I think that really worked in our favour. That's why Anthony got the stats that he did. So I think the focus that you guys might put on Edwards will allow Anthony to attack you. His first touch is second to none in this. He's absolutely fantastic. He's got the speed, and watching the Lazio game again the other day, the little link-up plays that he had with Kalinsky Hartman, one of our new signings, it, they were just absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I think those two specifically, Hartman and Anthony, they're gonna link up really well and hopefully cause some damage.
Yeah, well, hopefully not in my case, but I can understand why you want that to happen. Can you talk us through, Andrew, your predicted Burnley lineup, ideally 1 to 11, what you think that Scott Parker will go with?
Yeah, so hopefully Dubravka will be fit enough to start in goal. I think obviously he's one of the later signings, but hopefully he'll be involved. Then I think he'll go. I think we'll probably line up in a similar formation to how we did last year. So we'll have Dubravka in goal, Walker at right back. Then it'll be hopefully Maxime Esteve and Hjalmar Ekdal with Kalinsky Hartman at left back. Um, in midfield, we'll probably play with two holdings. So it'll be Josh Cullen and uh, I'm going to apologise because I've not yet learned how to pronounce his name, but I'm going to call him Leslie. Leslie Ogochukwu.
Yeah, I can't say it.
We'll just call him Leslie. But yeah, those two will be the holding midfielders. We'll have Marcus Edwards on the right, Hannibal Medjugorje, in the 10 role, and Jaden Anthony on the left. And then up front, I would like to see Broya. I don't know how fit he is. If he's not fit, I'd like to see Zian Fleming. Again, he's a player who hasn't really featured in pre-season. So it'll probably be Lau Foster.
Okay, still decent striker options to have. It'll be funny. Any three of them, I think, could cause Tottenham problems. From that team that you predict, Andrew, is there anything you would change if you're in Scott Parker's position?
That striker position, like I say, I would like to see Broya. It would be good to see him. Lyle Foster. Um, it's well documented that he has had his own personal demons, his own personal battles, but it's just not really taken off for him at Burnley. I think he's scored 8 goals in the space of 3 seasons. This will be his third full season with us, and it's just not really worked out. I think he's a good option to have, but he's for me at the moment not up to the standards of a starting number 9, especially not in the Premier League. And I'd like us to, if Broy's fit, give him that chance. He's got a point to prove. Give him that chance, and also a bit of competition for Foster. Then, when Foster realizes, he's not undroppable. He needs to perform as well. And yeah, hopefully it brings out the best in both of them.
Okay. Well, getting a result against a big top 6 side like Spurs give you more belief and optimism going into the season?
Yeah, I think it's crucial for everyone, to get a result on the first day. Anyway, but I think especially when we look at the fixtures that we've got you guys on the opening day, then we've got Sunderland at home, and then Manchester United away before the international break. We come back off the international break, and I think we've got to play Liverpool, Arsenal, City. This is why we're in the Premier League. We want to come up against the biggest and best teams. But I think getting a result against you guys on the opening day would definitely help us, especially after last time when we had such a slow start. It took us, till mid-October to even get a point on the board, and by that time we're already cut adrift. So yeah, I think getting a result against you guys would be massive in the opening stages of the season. If we can get 4 points out of our first 2 games, I'd be happy.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. I'm going to ask for your score prediction. Go for it.
I'm going to go for 1-1. I think you guys have obviously got the Super Cup final on Wednesday, so I'm hoping that your attention's focused more on that, um, and I'm hoping that that benefits us and that we can can steal something. We've done it before against you. I remember Chris Wood scoring in the last minute when you guys were still playing at Wembley. So yeah, hopefully we can get a result. So I'm going to go for 1-1.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we get to some end of season predictions, let's go over some kind of memories as being a Burnley fan for you, Andrew. Firstly, what is your earliest and favourite memory, or favourite, should I say, supporting Burnley?
Well, as I've already said, my favourite game was the Tottenham Carling
Is
Cup
that?
semi-final in
Yeah.
2009. I've never heard Turf Moor so loud. This was before we played in the Premier League, so for me, we hadn't played teams like Tottenham, Man United, Liverpool. We'd had the odd cup night, but it was never in our favour. We'd always get knocked out. And then that season, we'd beaten Chelsea at Stamford Bridge on penalties. We'd then knocked Arsenal out in the next round. And then we had you guys in the semi-final. And, to come away from White Hart Lane and be 4-1 down, you just think there's no chance. The championship team, there's no chance to win 3-0 in 90 minutes. And I remember being, I think I was 13 years old and all day at school waiting for the match because it were a night match in January and just thinking, we're going to do this. We're going to score 3 goals. Tottenham might score 4, but we're going to score the 3 goals that we need. And that just, like I say, it stands out to me. And then unfortunately for Burnley fans, Pavlyuchenko scored in the last minute, and then Jermaine Defoe had come on and he scored to make it 3-2. But yeah, that has to be one of my favourite games, no matter what, just because of how good the atmosphere was.
Okay. What does it mean? I mean, you have again touched on it. What does Burnley mean to you personally? Is it almost like your life?
Yeah, it's everything. It's very rare that you'll see me not wearing anything Burnley related, even if it's just my socks. Um, you know, the it's hard for me to imagine not being a Burnley fan. My dad took me on the matches when I was younger. He's Burnley mad himself. He took me on the matches when I was younger, and just got me into supporting them. And yeah, I just can't imagine a time without Burnley. I think even when I went away to university, I was still, representing Burnley and still following the club and doing everything I could to watch matches. So yeah, they just mean everything to me. And when I was in a bad place in my life and I started creating my graphics, it were Burnley fans who reached out to me, and they sort of created the community that helped me. So yeah, it just means everything.
Oh. Yeah, no, it's really nice to hear. Really nice. Thank you. Who's your all-time favourite Burnley player? Do you have one?
Yeah, so I have a goalkeeper called Brian Jensen. Um, Now he played in that match that we were talking about before, the Carling Cup one. These are his gloves that you see behind me.
Oh,
So now was even before that the Tottenham match. I was really small, and his nickname was the Beast. And no one wants to be a goalkeeper, do they really? But I desperately wanted a goalkeeper shirt on with the Beast because he was my favourite player at the time. And we went to Preston away, and he signed the shirt for me. And I just remember being absolutely made up. My dad wrote him a letter to say thank you for signing the shirt, and
oh,
Brian
nice.
got my telephone number from the ticket office because we have season tickets. Got the number from the ticket office and rang our house phone to say I'd like to give some gloves for Andrew. So we went down before one of the matches, and he gave us the gloves that you see behind me. And yeah,
Oh,
that
wow.
that just no matter what any other player does for the club, that little memory of him giving me those gloves, he will always be my favourite player purely for that reason.
Don't blame me. That's a lovely story, something that sticks with you as well. Thank you very much for sharing that one here. I think that's just lovely, isn't it? And that's class. I'd argue that maybe we've lost a little bit of that now in terms of players kind of being a little bit out of touch, in my opinion. I think some of that is with money and different things, but I'd argue that sadly that is maybe going. But that's such a lovely story. What's the long-term goal, I suppose, and dream for you, Andrew, as a fan, in terms of what you want to see from your club, Burnley? Is it to become a Premier League stable club again, like arguably you were under Sean Dyche? Is it to somehow win a domestic trophy, like I'm thinking League Cup maybe? What's the long-term goal that's ambitious but realistic?
For me, it's to see my club win a trophy. You look at teams like Crystal Palace who've won the FA Cup this season.
Mm.
You look at how Nottingham Forest have done to get into Europe. All these teams, and you can't help but be jealous of them. We qualified or we got to the Europa League qualifiers. I think it was 2017-18, and we didn't make it past the qualifiers to even get into the group stages, and that for me is the biggest shame of not the biggest shame of Burnley, but the biggest shame for me. Because, like I was saying before, I would rather see my club lift a trophy and get relegated than just sitting 17th in the league every season. Um, because at the end of the day, you want your club to be successful and you want to enjoy those moments. And for me, I'd love for us to just win a trophy, just to just win one, FA Cup for me, or the League Cup or something like that. I'd just be happy with that. But I think realistically, it's just got to be becoming an established Premier League team again. Um, we're a small club where I think our attendance is like 22,000. We've come from a town with a population of about 70,000. We are a small club, and we know we are. Um, so to become established in the Premier League again, like we were, hopefully gets us a little bit back to being the big club that we should be.
Hopefully, and I honestly mean this. I hope that you sometime soon do win that domestic trophy because, as a Tottenham fan myself and being 16, I saw the first trophy just recently in the Europa League, and it just is such a special feeling that you just can't describe. Having experienced it, you always hear others kind of tease around you. In Tottenham's case, you never win anything, etc., etc. So to win something, it feels so nice. It felt really special, and it's memories that stay with you. So I hope that you go to kind of experience that. I think Dyche gave you some special memories, but it's a shame you couldn't quite get into Europe. Let's get to some end of season predictions then. Go on then. Where do you think Burnley will finish in the Premier League? You say you're an optimist, you're positive, you're glass half full. Would you reckon you'll finish 17th?
Yeah, I really do think that we finished 17th. I think we've been a lot of people are underestimating who we are as a club, and a lot of people are underestimating for Scott Parker. I think a lot of people didn't really see much of us last season, and they're just going off the memories of what we were like under company, and then when we were under Sean Dyche. Um, and we're a different team. We're a lot more pragmatic now, and yeah, I think we've got enough quality in our team to finish 17th. A lot of people forget as well. There's a lot of teams playing in Europe this season in the Premier League, and the effects that can have on their league performances. We saw it with yourselves. We saw it all those years ago where we didn't even qualify, and we still had a poor season. It's a lot of people forget the impacts that these other competitions can have on your league season, and I think that's going to play into our hands, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, where do you think Tottenham, my club, will finish in the Premier League?
I think you're going to have a much better season than last year. I think I've put you down on my predictions of seventh.
Okay.
I think you're going to have a much better season than you had last year. But it's a season of developing and growing and learning under Frank. And this is a season of change. and you'll have to allow him that little bit of time. But I think this will be the lowest you finish under him, and it will be 7th.
That's fair, Joe. I had in my head 6th to 8th, and as a Spurs fan, I've always sat here going, "Oh, 6th." But if I'm being totally honest with you and had to go hand on heart, where do I think I finish? I would have said 7th or 8th, pushing that outer kind of Europe. I think probably England do get that extra place again. Time will tell. So that would mean Conference League for us. That's what I see it going. So I do agree with you. So thank you, Andrew, and it's been a real pleasure to talk to you today. Can you tell people where they can find you across social media?
Yeah, just always Claret across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Just always Claret. Search me, you'll find me somewhere.
Lovely stuff. Thank you very much for joining me, and I wish you all the best for the upcoming season.
No
Thank
problem,
you.
Harry. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. If you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. If you're listening on a podcast platform, a lot of you do, big up to you as well. Please do drop us a follow and a 5-star review. Make sure to check Andrew out across all socials and enjoy Tottenham versus Burnley. A massive, for now, come on you Spurs.